you have to cut that bird's mouth so that it planes out with the rest of the rafters on the top. We try to take the wood out of the wall and put in insulation. That changes depending on how you apply the stress in relation to the grain direction.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nuts and squirrels, welcome everybody to the Late Night Learning Bungalows for Bachelors show. Tonight, we are welcomed by the one and only Green Observer, making some beautiful music for us on that introduction. Here he is in the chat. Look at that right there. That's him. Check out the Green Observer on YouTube, guys, if you want to get some bomb-ass music. This guy is a creative. This guy knows how to both build sweet melodies, harmonies, and flows, put you in the zone, and not only can he build music, but this man can build houses. That's right. I've been spending the past few days with Mr. Green Observer up here in the Northwest, and I have to say, he is quite the craftsman. A lot of attention to detail and cares a lot about things coming out and looking just right. So shout out to Green Observer. Also, shout out to Jenna Nelson in the chat here. Hello, Jenna Nelson. I am hoping that you are here to learn, because that is what we are here to do today. And if I am breathing heavily, it's because I just did some pull-ups and I ran up and down a bunch of stairs. And so trying to get pumped up so I can give you guys the energy and the delivery that you need. So enjoy this show. Now, speaking of energy and delivery, guys, if you're going to want energy throughout your day, we got to eat food. Okay. And when we eat food, sometimes we have to cook food. If we want to eat healthy, stuff like that, that takes time. And so what I've got for you here is the Tower Climbers Cookbook. That's right. There's 50 out of 50. This is the last one. It says you are the last hope. Okay. We have 50 of these. We have less than 50 of these now. These have been being purchased for a little bit. So if you guys want to learn how to cook healthy meals very fast and get a whole bunch of great calories, there's a whole bunch of great stuff in this book. Send me a DM on somewhere, whether it's Telegram. You could go to t.me/BFB success, or you could go to my Skool server, www.skool.com/BFB success. Link is in the description below for that one. Go ahead and join that. Send me a DM, and we'll get you guys a cookbook. So, chat, look at, here we go. Jenna Nelson is ready to learn. She is fired up. That's good, because we're going to do some learning tonight. Now, for those who don't know, I have a Skool Community. That is the link that I just gave you. That is the place where I gather all these people together who want to learn about construction, and it's a place where I disseminate a lot of my information and all the stuff that I've got. So go ahead and join that. Again, link is in the description below, www.skool.com/BFB success, and that will take you guys to my Skool server. It's totally free to join, and we got some great people in there already. Looking to help you guys out, answer some questions, and just be a good supportive place. So inside that Skool group, I currently have 3 courses. The house forging project. Okay. If you don't know how a house is built, it's all the trades that are involved in the house build. Summary. That's pretty much it. We got the Become a Framing Nerd program. So if you want to learn a lot about framing, how it's designed, how engineers look at framing, and how you can analyze your own structures, your own houses, you name it. That's what that program is for. It is there to teach you guys, where do beams need to go? Where do roof braces need to go? How much tributary areas are combining loads into putting things here, here, and here? What size hanger do I need? What's the load on the end of the beam? All that stuff, it's all in there. So you can check it out there. It's all in my Skool server. Again, link is in the description below. And of course, I do have the Draft It Yourself program as well. That is my way of starting to teach you guys how you can draft. Whether you want to draw your own plans for your own projects, like maybe you're a contractor and you don't want to be paying out a designer, you want to have more control over the process with a client getting something designed. This is going to teach you how to use some very powerful software in a very, very fast way. I give you my templates that I use as a designer, and you guys can just take it and run. So that's what the Draft It Yourself program is for. Now, I do want to announce one more thing here, and that is I am going to have a design workshop July 27th and 28th. Okay. So if you find that you like some of the information I'm giving and you want to learn how to like build a house, what's the order, or if you want to learn how engineers look at framing, or if you want to learn how the design software works, either one, any of those things, I'm going to have this workshop the 27th and 28th. And the basic idea is going to be you guys can come up. It's going to be an all-day thing, both days, and I will stay on those calls until all of your questions are answered. So if you want to learn something or you've got a project and you just like have some things you don't know about it, you can get on that call and ask me a bunch of stuff. I'd be happy to walk you through all stuff. Again, it's the whole weekend, 27th and 28th of July, totally reserved for you guys. So just hit me up, send me a DM in the Skool server. Link is in the description below if you're interested in checking that out and joining. So last thing before I get into the technical information, guys, is at the end of this, I'm going to give you guys a little free giveaway thing. And it's related to the topic today. So I'm going to give you a bunch of information for you to learn. And then I'm going to give you a little nugget at the end to recap for yourself so you don't have to remember and take notes on all this stuff. But look who it is. We got Tam in the chat. Hello, Tam. Good to see you. Good to have your support and hope you're here to learn today. Very awesome. So we've got, all right, let's get right into it, guys. So how do I get to build my house 15% off? That's the question, right? Well, the answer is very simple. All you have to do is not use any framing or siding, and you'll save about 15% on your whole house. So that's the secret, guys. I hope that's why you came here to learn. Now, how do I build a house with no framing? You can't. And that's why you're here today, is because we absolutely need the framing to be there. And we need to know, like, where's the material coming from? Who is ordering it? Who's buying it? Who's specifying it? That's what we're talking about today, okay? So we're going to talk about this little thing we call the framing cornice package, all right? So when you build a house, presuming you're going to use pretty regular, typical siding products, whether it's LP or Hardy or, wood or whatever, somebody has to specify, well, how many 2x4s, how many 2x6s, how many wall studs, how many yada, 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 okay? Because this stuff has to be delivered. Therefore, somebody has to count it, all right? And so the framing / cornice package is a way to describe what is all of the framing and siding products that need to be delivered to this job to build the house for the framers to pick up and start working with it. Now, cornice is basically another word for siding. It's going to have to do with like a lot of the exterior finish material is wrapped into the word cornice. Okay, Cornice. If you've never heard the word cornice, I didn't hear it until I started getting into siding and builders and stuff like that. So that's what that means. And they usually go together because frequently the carpenter, like in the old days, all your siding used to just be wood. And so the carpenter that built the house was also just doing the siding because it was all just wood. Nowadays, depending on who your craftsman is, who your tradesman is, who the guy is that's doing the work, they might piecemeal it out and say there's a stick framing crew, there's a sheathing crew, there's a cornice crew. Like there's going to be different people doing different tasks. Just kind of depends on who's doing what and how a builder operates. So overall, it's generally the same people, and that's kind of why all this stuff is generally lumped together. So again, guys, we're going to build that. I'm going to talk to you about like this package. And at the end, I'm going to give you this little nugget that's going to be the information that's going to summarize a lot of the stuff that I'm giving you here. So listen up. What does it take to get a framing / cornice package? Cornice package, excuse the words there. So the first thing is your architectural design has to be done. And not only does your architectural design need to be done, but you have to, because there's a lot of architectural designs that don't specify wall section details, soffit details, what's vented, what's not, how, I mean, sometimes obviously the soffit width will be specified, but no one knows exactly how they're going to cut it to length and all this stuff and the other, and exactly how things connect. And so you really have to have a little bit more detail, either understood or implied, maybe by the plan or by the person building it, but you need that to be done. Now for the framing, for most houses that are very simple, you don't necessarily need an engineering design. You can go by prescriptive design from the code. And basically what that means is you're going to build everything super standard. There's maybe going to be like 1 or 2 beams in your whole house. Everything else is super plain Jane. Okay. What that means is like you don't need the engineer to get involved, but somebody has to do a framing layout. And what that means is the ceiling has ceiling joists that go this way, or do they go that way? Or do they do something else, right? Somebody has to decide how all this stuff's going to go together, and they need to decide before all the material is ordered. Okay. And typically, if you're going to have an engineer come in and do your engineering framing plan, that's all going to be specified. They're going to say, we're anticipating ceiling joists going here and here and here and here and here, and they're going to load the beams here, here, and here. These are the beams. Here's how long they are. All that information is basically going to go into like the framing layout. And that needs to be specified so that we can count the things. And this doesn't necessarily mean that the framing layout has to be on paper. As long as somebody understands how they're going to do it and they can count in their head, fine. But somebody has to do some kind of plan. Now, the siding detailing is kind of like the secondary part to that. So the framing layout's like, well, how are all the big pieces of the structure going together? And the siding detailing is like, well, how exactly is my fascia board connecting? How big is my fascia board? Is there an extra trim piece on my fascia board? Is there a sub fascia behind the fascia board? Like all this extra stuff has to be specified so that we know what materials to buy. So with those things specified, the last missing piece is somebody who understands the siding and the framing itself. And they must understand that, because the stuff's got to go on the building. And so if I just buy a bunch of like stock length of 2x4 or whatever, I could build a house out of that. But I'd be like cutting it up into a bunch of like random lengths and like a bunch of stud lengths, a bunch of stuff, and it would end up being super wasteful. And a lot of the materials we build with are designed to go on a certain way to make things faster, more efficient, and with less waste. So we have to know how we're going to use the materials. Therefore, we have to know how we're going to build physically. So typically, the person who understands it the most is going to be the framer siding guy. All right. So for most builders that are starting out, if they're not starting out from the like tradesman side, like, oh, I'm a framer turned builder. If they're not that kind of person, then they probably don't know how to get a framing package. And so what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, I'm a builder because I've got my laptop and I've got my cookbook and I've got my truck. I'm a builder now. I can go build houses. Yay. If they do that, they have to go and rely on the framer. Be like, hey, here's the architectural plan. Here you go. Make materials part of your bid. I don't want to deal with it or whatever. And so because of that, you have to understand that if you pick a bad framer who doesn't understand how to count and do math or whatever, which most framers should, but not all of them are as experienced as like the good ones. So you got to know who you're picking. They have to understand how to interpret the house. And frequently framers are going to have a decent idea of how a house is framed by looking at plans because they've been framing for a while. But if you get a less experienced framer, he is not going to see problems with your plan until like the walls are framed. And he's like, oh, this roof is doing something funny. This is odd. Like, we got to do something different. And now like they got to order material and things got to change. And then everything's delayed and everything's more expensive. And now you got all these problems. So when you rely on somebody who is not sophisticated enough, not the framers aren't sophisticated enough, there are framers for sure that can do great takeoffs because they accept responsibility for that part and they want it to be right. But there are also plenty of them that do not. And people have problems with this all the time. So the understanding component of how the thing gets framed and built is like you get the most value if that understanding is also baked into the one doing your framing layout. Okay. And if you know somebody that does like architectural design, framing layout, and a framing package all in one, of which there are people out there that do that. I happen to be one of them, but there are plenty of people that can do that. Then that's like probably the best place to get that information, because you're going to be dealing with somebody that is invested in that being correct, and they've been through the whole house design in their brain from the very beginning. They're not just somebody who like does like, you kind of want to also sort of avoid somebody who only does takeoffs, because it's like, all right, here's this house design, looks like this. Okay, here's about what the takeoffs need to be, yada yada yada. Here's your list, plus or minus 10%, go build your house. That's less connected. It's not as good as well. So the dilemma that a lot of people have here is that these things tend to be split up. It's hard to find these generally in one person or one company. So when you do, it's a great thing. But why does this matter? Well, okay, so how does like a builder how's a builder going to get this framing package? Well, most of the time, if they don't know anything about framing, they're going to have their framer put it together. There are alternatives, like if they build volume, if they can build a lot of houses, then they can generally get on board with bigger building suppliers. And there are some building suppliers that do takeoffs for you as part of the service of supplying your material. And so you basically just give them the plans, you give them the engineering plan if you need to, and they look at that and they say, okay, here's this takeoff list. It's free. It's part of the service. It's part of giving you all your material. And they will make deals like that with volume builders. The issue with that is before you're building 40 houses a year, before you're building 80 houses a year, you're probably building one house a year or two or three houses a year. And you can't get involved with those groups. And so you've got to find some other way of getting that information reliably so you don't end up screwing yourself. And very likely, if you're doing the first 3 to 5 houses or whatever, you really can't afford to be wrong on a framing package. You really can't, because you're probably also learning how to run a business at the same time you're figuring this out. And so you don't want to make huge like estimate mistakes on that. So that's how a builder's going to do it. So they're either going to have somebody like me who draws their plans, who can give them all this information, they can rely and trust, and like all this stuff works, or they're going to split things up, try to manage it well as best they can. But that's pretty much it. So why does this matter to us? Like if we're regular people, most of us aren't builders who are watching this. And so why does that matter to us? Well, that matters to us because we need to think about, if we're going to do a project, well, where are we going to get that information? And the reason I brought up the 15% thing and the whole discount thing in the beginning is you need to understand how big of a chunk of your house cost this is and how important it is that this cannot be wrong. So with such an important piece and with such a lack of access to maybe information or whatever as newer people doing projects, it's important to try to understand it as much as we can. And that's kind of why I'm here. And so I'm trying to like show you guys how this stuff goes together. Now, you guys can get a framing package by doing a few things. If you can manage to get on those big suppliers lists, you can give them a plan. Sometimes they'll give you a takeoff. There are some that are, depending on how the industry is going, they might accept new one-off jobs from people like, us just doing bungalows, whatever. They could accept that. You could also find people who do takeoffs as a job. There are companies that do that. You have to specify a lot of information, but frequently, a lot of the information they're going to request to ask for, all the detailing and all that stuff, may not be in your architectural plan. And so you either got to get a plan that's got that detail, or the next thing is you get a plan drawn from somebody who can provide you all that next information, because that's what you're going to need next if you're building a house, especially if you're trying to get financing from a bank or whatever like that. Like a lot of the work can be, okay, plumber's going to include his material, right? He's a plumber. Electrician's going to include his material, the outlets, the switches, the wire, all that stuff. Okay. They usually necessarily won't include like nice light fixtures. Those are typically add-ons. But most of the trades are going to include the material in their bid, because a lot of tradesmen want to control material so they don't get screwed by the builder by having bad or improper material on site. And now they are sitting and they can't do anything with it. And that's just a waste of money for everybody. So a lot of times tradesmen want to control their material. And I would say framing is slightly different in that regard in this industry, because at least in the places I've built, there are definitely framers who are like, I'm in charge of my framing. Like the material, I'm not letting you order jack. And they'll do the extra work for that because they want to guarantee that, they want to be responsible for that so they can control it. But I have dealt with plenty of framers who are just guys that are like, yeah, I'll frame for $7 a square foot, $6 a square foot, whatever. I'll just show up and whatever's there, I'll just start smacking it together. There are people who do that. And so you don't want those people to be the ones you give your house plans to and say, yeah, can I get a bid? And they're like, well, I don't normally do material. And it's like, well, I don't really know how either. So could you just take care of it for me? And they're like, yeah, I guess so. So they give it a shot. And then off you go with your funhouse project now. So when you're trying to put together a budget of a house build, I say this all because like at the beginning of the beginning of the build, you're trying to figure out, okay, I've paid cash, I've got plans. Now I need to know how expensive this house is to build. If you have land, then that's good. Have some kind of estimate for like site work and prep and landscaping and that stuff. But building the structure of the house is largely going to be, what are all the trades? Find a tradesman that I like in each one of those categories. There are lots of ways to do that. And then get a bunch of quotes, get a bunch of bids from everybody to fill all of these categories. And if you guys want to see what these categories are in my Skool server, I have downloads where you can go download Excel files that's got like these things broken out. And it's not, it's not all inclusive because every house is different. But it's like, you want a majority of them? Boom, here you go. It's all free. And so it's all in the Skool server. Check it out there. So basically, where was I going with that? Got a little bit, I derailed myself there with the thing. So we got, all the traits. Yeah. So you're going to get all these bids and you're going to put this house price together. But the bid for the framing package is unique most of the time. And that's going to be its own little thing that's like, man, this needs to be right. I don't necessarily want to trust random Joe Schmo who's framed like a deck one time and he's going to be my framer for this house. And I need this to be right. So like I got to get that information from somewhere. And it's just such a big chunk. And so that's why you should be aware of the framing cornice package and like how important it is, right? So that's something to be aware of. So let's do some chat shoutouts, guys. So we got Jenna Nelson in the chat. Good to see you, Jenna. She is ready to learn. We got Tam. Hello, Tam. And we got Green Observer. Thank you guys for spending your valuable time here today, learning about building houses. I hope this has been somewhat educational. It's time for you guys to once again consider getting one of these if you haven't already. But it's time for that free giveaway. Mechanically, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but I wonder if there's I'm going to consider just dropping it in the chat. I will do both. I'm going to copy this text, drop it in the chat, and then I'm going to also post a PDF on the Skool server. So if you don't want to go through the chat and you miss it in the chat, it's going to be on my Skool server. You can find it there. But what I'm going to give you is a checklist of most generally of the materials that are going to be in most house builds. Okay. Not all inclusive, not for every house build. Things can be wildly complicated and different. So I'm going to dig that up right now. And I'm going to copy paste that sucker right into here. Let's see what happens. We're going to find out what happens. Copy. All righty. Oh, hello. We got Wyatt. Hey, Wyatt. Just stopping by to say hi. In traffic, so can't stay on. Enjoy, guys. Good to see you, Wyatt. Thank you, sir. All right, let's go over here. I don't want to drop it in StreamYard. Let me go ahead and drop it in YouTube. All right. Oh boy. It's off it. I think it's got everything. We're gonna find out. Nope. Character max. Okay. That's not gonna work, guys. I cannot post that in the chat, but I have a checklist for you guys of all the stuff that could be in a framing package if you want to be like, all right, you know what? I'm going to consider doing this myself. Okay. What do I need? It's all going to be in there. And I'll go ahead and just like run through this real quick so you guys can see the list. All right. You ready? You ready? Okay. You got post bases, post base anchors, sill seal, bottom plates, top plates, studs, posts, headers, temporary bracing for building the house, maybe some scaffolding, help you build stuff a little bit easier. Gable and rake studs, ram set loads and ram set pins for shooting down those wall plates and stuff like that if you're building on a slab. All right. Wall sheathing, drywall backing, ceiling beams, ceiling joists, joist hangers, attic subfloor, ceiling bracing or rat runs, rafters, ridge boards, hips and valleys, purlins, purlin braces, roof sheathing, soffit ledgers and blocking, outlookers, hurricane clips, fascia board, favoring nails, galvanized framing nails, and you could get way more complicated with hardware depending on what kind of house you're building. But that's like the framing, and then siding is going to be the house wrap or however you are water sealing. Again, very typical, but you could get very complicated with all kinds of different products. Wrap tape, flashing tape, windowsill tape, window door headers, flashings, siding panels or laps or whatever you're doing with siding, board and batten if you need it. You got to have the battens in there. Window and door casings for the exterior, corner trim pieces, whatever those are going to be, freeze trim pieces, if whatever those are going to be, extra trim on your fascia if you're doing that. If you're doing special beam wrap details around your front porch, you got to have that stuff. If you're wrapping posts, you got to have that stuff. And then if you're doing soffit, you've got to have like your ceiling panels and your vented soffit. And then if you've got like H-mold that's going in the seams, if that's what you're doing. So like that's the quick and dirty list. But yeah, I'll go ahead and drop that for you guys if you want to not have to write all that down because I said it pretty quick. There's a lot of stuff in there and can't afford to be getting that stuff wrong. So summary, it's very important to know how this package is being put together. If you're going with a builder, figure out how the builder is getting this package. This is good to know, even if you're using a builder, because some builders will use a bad process because, let's be real, guys. Everybody who's in business is in some phase of learning. They just started or they're an expert. Everybody's learning something. And so you'd never know which part like you are coming in at. And so it's good to be aware, just so that, don't get yourself in trouble. But if this has been slightly helpful to you guys, feel free to join the Skool server that I got. It's totally free. www.skool.com/BFB success. Link is in the description below. I'd love to have you guys over in the community. You can ask me questions all day long, whatever you want to know. Come on over, come hang out with us. We're a pleasant crew, and we're here to help everybody learn. So check it out. Also, again, guys, I'm going to do a design workshop on July 27th and 28th. All day, both days, and I will not stop until all of your questions have been answered, should you decide to come on. So if you're interested in participating, feel free to reach out to me on Skool server. Link is in the description below. That's how you can get a hold of me. And that is what I got coming on for you guys. So I appreciate all of you coming on here. Again, thank you for joining us. This has been one of the shorter ones, but hey, that's cool. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week. If you ever have a question or a particular topic you want to know more about, I'd be happy to, especially if you give me a few days and it's something I don't know a lot about, I'll do some research and I'll give you guys what you need so that you know what you need to know. And you don't have to not know what you don't know. And with that, I'll take it out. Let's listen to some more of that beautiful Green Observer. I will see you guys next week. Farewell.